Evening, Janice.
Hi. How's your eye?
Hi.
Much better, thank you. Yes, going down.
Oh, good.
or gone down. Thank you. Hi, Jane. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Yes, I'm okay.
Good. Yeah. Nice sunny evening, which is lovely.
Beautiful. I'm in the darkest little room in our house, but I can see the sun out there. Yeah. Yeah, it's been glorious, which is nice, isn't it? So
It is.
the moon was nothing funny today, was it, Susie? I've had a little bit of a funny day.
Today it moved from Virgo into Libra.
Ah, okay.
Good evening, Karen.
Hi, sorry I was nearly late.
No, you're fine.
Is everybody okay?
We've only just arrived.
Yeah, we're good.
Good, thank you. Yes.
Fortunately, my computer decided to work quickly because it normally doesn't, and I would have been late then.
Yes, they can be very temperamental, can't they?
Mine certainly can.
So, any thoughts for the week?
Thoughts for the week. I had a brown rice dish last night, which even my other half ate and enjoyed, and I enjoyed. So that was a bit of a success, because we're not always having the same meals just now. So that was actually, he said, yeah, this is different, but it's fine. So that was quite good. So right. Brown rice, and I soaked it like you said, and actually it's much better. And I think it made it easier for him to eat it, really. So that's good.
Yes, because it can be quite a bit chewy. Yeah,
not quite mastered the quinoa yet. I've got it, but I haven't thought, okay, but I'll give that a go. And the hummus recipe is amazing, but I'm going to have to do a smaller quantity because it was only me eating it. You have the biggest bowl ever, but it is the best hummus I've ever made. So that was lovely and so easy, isn't it? So that was
very easy.
A positive, yes.
Was it with the sprouted chickpeas that you did it?
No, I just did it. Gosh, you're very good, aren't you? No, I just opened a can and did exactly what it says and put sun-dried tomatoes in. Oh, it was amazing, really lovely. So that's something quite easy and that I liked.
I've done some sprouting.
Oh,
which
yes,
one are you sprouting, Janice? Is it sunflower?
No, it's a gourmet mix from the health food shop, so it's a mixture of different seeds.
Oh my God, clever you!
Very good.
Looks lovely.
That's the last bit. I've been eating it and it keeps growing. So that's the last chunk that I'll have for lunch tomorrow. But I mean,
so wait, were they just normal seeds, Janice?
Yeah, I can show you. Hang on.
Gosh,
I did brown rice.
To know the list.
So in my health food shop, they sell seeds that you grow with.
Oh, right. So you need special ones. You can't.
That's the gourmet mix, wellness mix, fitness mix.
Oh, you're showing off now.
I think that was I think I opened the gourmet, but that's the open packet. I think it's the gourmet mix that's in there.
Right. And you just, great. I presume you just chuck them in a jar, do you, or something?
Yeah, exactly what Susie was saying last week.
Right, okay. Well, maybe I'll give that a whirl.
What is in the gourmet mix, out of interest?
Hang on.
Naughty,
it says lentils, white radish, rocket, angula. So 4 different ones: lentils, white radish, rocket, and angula seeds.
Gosh.
And they're all certified organic.
And it's super scrummy, is it?
Yes, I mean, it was tastier when they were like the first ones, because I've been growing it for weeks. They're getting a bit leggy now.
Oh, okay.
But what I did at lunchtime with the leggier ones when I had some was just put some balsamic vinegar and olive oil on them, so they were, tastier then.
Do you keep them in the fridge, Janice?
No, they're sat on the window ledge. So that
After you've got them to the length you like, if you put them in the fridge, it holds it bits.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
Because they go a bit sort of stringy, don't they, when they get too big?
Yes. I didn't know you could do that. Okay, well, that's helpful information then.
Yeah, you can sort of harvest them
Yes.
and put that batch in the fridge.
Oh, okay.
Make more
Oh, right, I'll
stuff
do that in
and
future then.
Mm.
Oh, well, I better give those a whirl, haven't I? You put me to shame now, Janice, with all your...
Well, do you know what? Because I can't remember, because I get lost with who's on what calls, but did you see the talk Susie did on sprouting? If not, she can send it out to you.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one.
Yes, is that what I need, a sprouting?
Yeah, so the talk's very good, and at the end, I think the thing was I quite like history, and I was so taken when she was saying that in the times of the sort of discovery journeys, Cook and all of that, they would take seeds with them because there was no fresh food, and if you sprout them, they would sprout them, and then they had fresh greens. And I thought, that's so obvious. That's so obvious. How do you not think of it? And then Susie was saying, so if ever there's a crisis, like lockdown, and you can't get fresh greens, or you can't leave the house, like I can't at the moment for self-isolation, I can't leave, you can sprout those. And I thought, that's just so obvious. How did anybody not realise that? There's no need ever to have, is it scurvy? I can't remember.
That's right.
There's just no need. There's no need to ever have it, because even if you haven't got things in the garden, as long as you've got seeds,
Yeah. Interesting.
I just that whole thread of thought caused me to then end up getting my sprouter out. Yeah.
You're still self-isolating?
Yeah, I can't leave the house till Sunday midnight.
Oh, crikey.
Are you going out at midnight to have a party?
Actually, my mum's not at all well, so I'm probably.
Oh dear.
Fine, yeah. So yeah, it's a bit complex at the moment. And then I've got to work again next week. But if you're not isolating, because my school closed this week due to COVID.
Oh, God.
So I was isolating from a week ago, Thursday last week, and they sent me home with some admin work. But then on Monday night, the head sent out an email to everybody saying that the school was closed and all lessons would then go online. So I woke up on Thursday to having to run lessons where they were just sending me admin tasks to do at home, and my lessons were getting covered by incorporating the children into other lessons and things at school. But from Tuesday, all teachers had to run all their lessons from home. So from Tuesday, I've been having to run lessons on this from home for all the students that I have on any lesson. So it's been really stressful. Yeah, but the school's closed. They had 500 children off, and between 30 and 40 teachers off. It wasn't possible to run it, so they had to close.
Were any of the pupils actually ill, or are they?
Yeah. There was
not just positive.
They've got at least 10 positive cases in the children alone, and there are positive cases in the teachers as well.
I have to say, it's all having quite a few of my daughter's friends. They've got it. They've got little kids. They've all tested positive, but she actually, the mum is the only one that's got any symptoms. She's not mega poorly, but she's got a bit. But the others absolutely fine. So
it's just you just have to see how you go with it,
isn't it? Yeah.
As Susie said, I think it depends on your overall health at the time, really.
Yes. Yeah,
so but it's going through York like wildfire at the moment. The bins are not being collected. Lots of the shops in town, the independent shops, a lot of them are shut because there's people either having to isolate or have got COVID. The school's shut.
Oh,
so it's crazy here at the moment.
Yes.
It seems ridiculous to me that we're opening up on Monday with all this going on here.
I know. I think a lot of people.
You live at Janice?
I'm in York, so this is York. Yeah, the situation in York. So our numbers are going up rapidly here at the moment.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? Just got to be careful.
Yeah.
Very careful.
My son's had to isolate. That also happened. he was sent home. So I've got 3 children. The youngest one was sent home. He's not allowed back in school until Tuesday now. One of his friends tested positive. That's not the same school that I'm at. It's a different thing.
No. It's also complicated, isn't it? It just makes you, every time you go somewhere, you think, oh, am I going to get something? And yeah, anyway, just have to hope, don't we, and do our
Crazy
best.
times. Well, I was really shocked. I've been very shocked with what's happened over the last few weeks. I honestly thought the last time that we had a lockdown, that was it. And then I had to isolate about 3 weeks ago. I thought, well, that's the last leg of it. And then now, the school's closed.
Dear. Oh dear, it's not good. And everybody who I know who's been down to Cornwall, and quite a few people seem to have, they've all come back and they've got COVID. But some of them, one of them actually is a teacher, and he was zapped within a couple of days of being there. So that curtailed his holiday and he was back.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
Yeah, it's just going all over the place.
But I think going back to the sprouting, I'm just trying to take a minute at a time in terms of looking after myself. I've become really diligent now. Immune system priority.
Absolutely. So we all need, I shall get sprouting.
Well, you don't have to do that. That, as I say, that I just went down that thread because of the story of no fresh veg, and I thought, well, I haven't got fresh veg in my garden. Perhaps I'll just grow some of those. That sounds great. So I just, it
is nice that we can grow it on the windowsill, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's quick. Yeah. It happens quickly.
Yeah, no, I like stuff that's fast.
Lentils are the quickest, I think, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
How long do they? What is that, overnight then or something?
Well, almost literally. They have
really
shoots on the next morning.
Wow.
Better also bad evening or the next day.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, isn't it?
Mung beans aren't far behind.
Mung beans, yeah.
It just feels like there's no need for any children to be short of. You know, you hear, don't you, about, especially in America, about these whole areas of society that live where there's no grocers and no fresh fruit. But actually, in reality, there's no need to be in a situation where you've got nothing fresh, because, you know, this exists. How is it not more known about?
Well, we could say that of a lot of things, maybe.
Yes, we could. You're right.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is quite satisfying to go. Yeah, so, you know, have a go. It's quite satisfying. What I will say though is be careful how many you put in, because it creates far more than you think it's going to.
It does, doesn't it? Yes. Yeah. Yes, you're right there. You can be chomping away for days.
About an inch in the bottom of a coffee pot, a coffee bottle, and it fills up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, I actually put not many in. I thought, I'm not falling for this again. And I still ended up eating it every single day, and it's still, you know, I will only just get through it before I would have had to have thrown some out.
Oh, goodness.
You put it in your porridge.
Step too far. Step too far.
Cereal.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
God no. I've just taken the step over the last year and a half to the green juice in the morning. I'm not ready for the sprouts on my breakfast yet.
So that's you're doing really well then, Karen. That is amazing. No, I'll have to say I'm with Janice on that one. Not sure about
that. Too far.
I've just been sprouting. Sprouting is one of the things I've been doing for a lot of years. I'm nothing like as good as you two at clean eating. Don't fret yourself.
Sure you are. If you're doing your sprouting and stuff, I'm very impressed.
Some live enzymes. Well, my little granddaughter quite likes them as a snack. So
that's really good.
Nice.
That is a super snack. Really good.
There's no way I would have, you know, yeah. I mean, to be honest, my first one, they all ate brilliantly up till about a year and a half, 2 years, and then it just, when you've got 3, it becomes quite tricky, because they go to parties and then, you know, introduced to sweets, and I've not managed that well.
It's interesting. One lady who was on the course last time mentioned that in the morning she just chops up iceberg lettuce, carrots, celery, all sorts of crunchy veg, pops it in a big bowl on the counter when everybody's home. And she said they just chomp their way through it because they know that's what they've got to eat. So they do snack on it.
God.
And there's, I think she said the 12, 14, and then a couple of girls in their 20s. So a couple of lads in their teens and a couple of girls in their 20s.
Yeah.
Two out of the three of mine would eat that.
Mm.
2 out of the 3 will eat celery sticks, carrot sticks. Yeah, they would.
Mm.
The third one wouldn't.
Yeah.
Is that the youngest one? Is that your
No,
youngest?
it's the middle
Oh.
one. But they're not great eaters. My eldest one is a good eater. Well, not just at the moment, but generally speaking, she's a very healthy eater. The 2 boys are not. They've got sucked into the teenage diet with their friends at the moment. I mean, peer pressure is quite big at 12. They're 12 and 14. So
God.
yeah, they pretty much won't eat healthy food at the moment. But I continue to eat healthy food around them and hope that by osmosis I'm kind of thing.
Yeah.
It does work.
Sorry.
Yeah.
One of my daughters says if she gets, because the little ones do eat very healthily, and when she gets somebody else in, she says, right, this is, just taste this. If you really don't like it, you can spit it out. I have no problem with that, but just have a mouthful first. And that's what she says to the kids when they have something new, because they look and go, it's fine. She said, I give you a napkin, you spit it into that, that's okay. And that's what she does. And then sometimes they go, oh, actually, this is all right, I can eat this again. But obviously when they're little, it's easier to just kind of, just focus them a little bit, isn't it? And if you get stuff they like, then they do get used to it. But it is when they get to teenage, it's really, it's quite tricky.
Yeah, I had a really close insight into it because one of the boys that I look after at school had a BTEC assignment to help the site team at work. So we went in and asked them what job they wanted us to do. And it was to clean the rubbish up from the floor of the bike sheds. So to make it fun, because we were both stuck out there, it was a snowy day and we were both stuck out there for an hour, him and me, because I had to watch him doing it and record it. I said, oh, let's record what we pick up. Oh my God, it was such an insight into the teenage diet. There was crisp packets, wrappers for the cakes that you could buy at school in the breaks, lots of fizzy can bottles, lots of sweet wrappers, hot dog and burger type wrappers. I'm trying to think what else, but it was absolute insight into the teenage diet. It really was. You could see exactly what they were eating.
Dear. Not good.
Yeah. Hard. Right. Well, having slated wheat last week, this week it's the turn of dairy. Sorry about that. But it is unfortunately another food that causes a lot of inflammation. So more so in the respiratory system as well as the gut. So with wheat, it tends to be more the gut and also joints as well. But with dairy, it has an enormous tendency to create a lot of mucus in the upper body, unfortunately. Don't know if anybody has noticed that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So let's just see if this will play ball. So you mentioned that you're trying a few grains other than wheat. have you tried anything else different apart from the sprouts this week as well? That's great, but something different as well.
Yes, soaking my breakfast.
Right, yeah.
I've managed to soak my breakfast overnight. Most nights I've remembered to do it. So I've done that. That's different.
And did you mind it?
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Mm.
And it expands a huge amount as well.
Yes.
Yeah, no, so that I've done different. I've stuck to the drinking loads of water, so 2 litres every day, which is still feeling like a difference. You know, it's not normal for me still. Just trying to think what else I've done differently. Oh, I'm trying to eat a bit of raw at lunch, so I've had the sprouts. So that I wouldn't do. I mean, as if I've said to you loads of time, I don't like salad, so that's different. I don't know. How about everybody else?
Well, I've been doing the breakfast. We had spinach and egg one day, and I didn't enjoy that. It was frozen spinach, but we didn't have any fresh on that day. And I can honestly, I like spinach. I can honestly say that frozen spinach is disgusting.
Right.
I made it. It's horrid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really horrid, and it's a shame because it's enough to put you off spinach.
Mm.
When fresh spinach is actually very nice.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, and we've been eating things like beetroot leaves as well, cooked. They're very much like spinach when they're cooked.
Oh God!
Yes, the beetroot tops. That's right.
Yes, we've been experimenting a little bit with things that we might forage for. So we've been eating 1 or 2 weeds that grow on the allotment. Like one's called fat hen, and the other one which you would know, I think, is chickweed, which grows in most people's gardens, and that's really nice in salad. So we've had a few experiments like that.
I must look those up, Karen, and see what they look like so that I actually recognise them.
Yeah. I'd be a bit nervous I'd get the wrong thing. Something wasn't very nice.
Well, they're pretty distinctive of these two.
Oh, okay.
You can get a little foraging book, and it shows you all the things that you can pick. And
actually, I've got one of those somewhere. Yeah, I must dig that out.
It'll be online as well, won't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a shame we've lost all this knowledge. Every time I kind of hear these things, I just think how sad that, because our grandparents, great grandparents would have known this sort of thing, you know.
There's so many flowers I think you can eat pansies, can't you? There's so many things you can that are absolutely
nasturtium leaves and the
I used to eat those when I was little. I remember having them in the garden and eating those.
Dandelion leaves.
Ooh, are they nice? What do you do with those?
Just put them in salad.
Oof, gosh.
They're actually supposed to be a cure for COVID.
Are they?
Yes.
Oh goodness. Okay, so I'll now go looking for a dandelion.
Yes, dandelion tea is very good.
Yes.
It's good for all sorts of things, isn't it, dandelion?
It is.
I mean, you can make a sort of coffee out of the roots, can't you?
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yes. Yeah. Dandelions. Okay. Gosh.
Yes, and it's a diuretic, but it's also I can't remember the term. Actually, I wrote it down the other day, I think. When I was looking. Where did I write it down? No, it's gone. Sorry. No, it's not going to leap out at me. But a particular type of now, you know, they talk about expectorants and that kind of thing. It's a term like that, but I can't think which one. But yes, really good for you. Yeah, and they have that slightly bitter flavour which feeds the heart and small intestine.
Right, I didn't know that.
In
fact, I'll write that down too.
So we're also going to have a look at blood in a little bit more detail today, and the pH of blood. and then have a look at dairy and alternatives to dairy, and a little bit of critical thinking around it. What does research show about dairy? Because the dairy industry is a very large one, and you don't necessarily get to hear negative research information, because it's if you go into a supermarket, for example, dairy is in so many, I'm going to put in inverted commas, foods that are very profitable. And have a look at alternative calcium sources as well, because often people are a bit worried about, well, if I don't eat dairy, where am I going to get my calcium from?
Green leaves.
Yeah. So your blood, you've got about 5 litres circulating around the body, and the heart beating about 100,000 times every single day in order to pump that round. So with each pulse, you're pumping about 2 ounces, 73 millilitres of blood. And your heart is shifting 8 tons a day.
Good heavens.
Unbelievable, isn't it? So all the blood passes through the heart and your liver every 3 minutes. And so your red blood cells are passing the oxygen to your cells, collecting the carbon dioxide, and removing that cellular waste. And your blood is also removing other cellular wastes as well, and carrying nutrients along with the oxygen. Now, in terms of holding an ideal weight that is healthy, your blood is absolutely key, because they are able to look at blood in an acidic state, and having been nourished, if you like, by an acidic diet, and blood that is nourished by lots of vegetables and fruit, because it will contribute to dictating your internal environment and your blood. And they can see, for example, if we eat a lot of fatty foods, the blood cells start to clump together. When we eat acidic foods, we don't make particularly great blood cells. They're not really very healthy shape or size, and they don't behave in a particularly ordered or helpful way. So if you could imagine acidic blood, acidic body, alkaline blood, alkaline bloody, because it's body, sorry, not bloody, because it's the alkaline blood that feeds your tissues. So alkaline foods and drinks, like your little bean sprouts, for example, build healthy blood cells. Now, every second, your body makes 3 to 4 million blood cells. And every second, your body makes 11 to 13 million body cells, tissue cells, organ cells, eye cells, brain cells, kidney cells, digestive cells. Isn't that eye-watering to think
It
about?
is.
It really makes you wonder, though, about when you think of all the poor diets that people have. It makes you wonder how they're walking about, really.
Yes, yes, it does. And I think it's thinking about what state of health they accept in order to do so. And so, very often, if there is a lot of medication coming in, there's been an acceptance of, I am not going to do anything to change the internal environment myself, if you like, or there's a denial or an ignorance or, you know, whatever, a lack of awareness around that, I guess, because there are certainly things we can do that will improve many states of health, from the acutest to the most chronic. So when we are consuming alkaline foods, electron-rich foods, like our essential fatty acids and so on, we can build these healthy blood cells, and we can also build healthy body cells. But if we eat acidic foods that are more proton rich, then our intestines can become quite damaged and congested, and the blood production also is impaired or stops, so that you're not even really making new vibrant blood. And so we need 5 million red blood cells for every cubic millimetre in your blood to nourish your body's cells with oxygen.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, they're vast numbers, aren't they? And obviously it's because they're so tiny, but you know, we can actually see under a microscope these days how healthy they are. So if your pH is out of line, and one of the things that contributes most significantly to an alkaline pH is the vegetable intake, and particularly, like you mentioned, Karen, you know, your green leafy veg are hugely important. So vegetables are your very best friend, and if that pH is out of balance, then that's when our main, you know, vital organs start to go into disrepair, because, you know, your body will go at huge lengths to maintain their integrity. Things like, for example, building cholesterol plaques in the artery, storing fats to accumulate acids. And so when we're holding fat, it's because those fat cells are useful to us. It'll leach calcium from our bones in order to keep our pH correct, or leach magnesium from the heart or the muscles. So this is where we can get things like, you know, regular tics, cramping, palpitations, you know, anything that is indicating low magnesium or low calcium. Symptoms that involve those will be our body trying to balance our pH. So is a dairy-free diet healthy? What do you reckon?
Can be.
Can be, yeah.
I think it is, if you have the right vegetables and other things that help.
Yes, it's replacing it carefully. What they've actually found is that the calcium in dairy is not a particularly accessible form for human beings. It's great for cows, but because the milk is also higher in sodium, for example, than breast milk, then the sodium will contribute to our own calcium imbalancing. But unfortunately, as I said, the dairy industry is enormous, and the Milk Marketing Board and the medical profession sort of work hand in hand. And I have met countless people over the years who've had a diagnosis of osteoporosis and been told you must drink a pint of milk a day, which is one of the most clogging, mucus forming things that anybody could do. And they did a research study some years ago with nurses and found that those with the highest dairy intake had the highest levels of osteoporosis. So just to clarify that dairy does not include eggs. It's simply a description for anything that's been derived from milk. So cream, cheese, yogurt, and milk itself, creme fraiche, any of those products. Now, calcium, obviously we use for the bones, and I think about 90+% of it is on the bones. We use it for managing partly our heart rhythm, along with sodium, magnesium and potassium, but also it's used to tense the heart muscle. We also use it to calm the central nervous system, and it's used for clotting in the blood and also to help manage blood sugar. And obviously the other place is our teeth. And so the lovely thing about calcium as well is that it's also a bit of an alkaline buffer. And so you'll probably be aware, maybe if you've come across the product, that something like Rennie's is a calcium based product. It's calcium carbonate, these antacids, and what they're doing is they are neutralizing the acidity, and that's why they temporarily can help someone who's got acid heartburn. But it's thinking about why that acid heartburn has taken place in the first place. And that will be due to misplaced minerals, partly due to dehydration or stress, etc. So, and acid diet. But then having said that, stress is very acid forming as well, unfortunately. So dairy milk has a completely different composition to human milk, because a cow will grow from a calf to a fully grown cow or bull in 1 to 2 years. Human beings take 17 to 19 years to get to their full stature. And so dairy milk is much higher in saturated fats, where we have more polyunsaturated fats for brain development. The casein protein in it is very difficult for us to digest, and particularly that, the longer we go past 2, the less likely we are to produce enzymes that will actually help us digest either casein or lactose, and particularly lactose. Sugars content in dairy can be a problem as well. So one of the things we've already mentioned is its mucus forming. Does anybody particularly find that's one of the main problems they might experience? No? They know that it can contribute to the allergic response. So we spoke about hay fever, I think, a couple of sessions ago. And dairy is one of those things that will contribute to that internal state of stress that will then make somebody react to the external triggers like pollen. So also, unfortunately, dairy protein, because it's quite high can contribute to calcium loss from the kidneys. Now, actually, any animal protein can contribute to that. And so this is why, if we have an animal product, it's a good idea to have a pretty small portion. 4 ounces is ample, not like these, massive great steaks that they serve up in the US, or buffalo grills or whatever. And then thinking about, as I mentioned, the body's ability to keep its pH balance, and the dairy being sodium high. So it maybe, has a nice level of calcium, but it's also got the sodium alongside it. And both of those things really are associated with infancy. So the tutor, the principal tutor of the college I trained with used to say that, high consumption of dairy holds us in a childlike state, if you like, because we can't fully move into adulthood until we have enough potassium and magnesium, but particularly potassium. And I thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about mineralization, because she used to talk about some other minerals as well. This was from research by Professor Carl, or was it Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, who worked a lot with people with conditions like schizophrenia. And he did a lot of research on zinc and copper. And he found that where diets were low in zinc, that schizophrenics in particular usually had a very low zinc diet and a very high background of copper in the body. And he would find also that copper was associated with addictions. So people who struggled with, drug addictions and alcoholism, possibly also contributing to smoking addiction as well, with cigarettes, and that there's this high copper status which contributes to a dependency on something, whereas the zinc created, again, that independent thinking, because it is part of brain health as well. And apparently in ancient tribes, so I apologise if I've said this before, in ancient tribes, you'll love this, they used to give the testicles and the eyes of the animal to the chief, because they knew that their chief's mind and brain need to be fed with a lot of zinc. Lucky old chief. And so these parts of the body, because they take a lot of zinc to feed, if you like, and nourish, are also high in zinc as a part of the body to consume. Fancy a bit of that? I'd go for more pumpkin seeds if I were being so if you're wanting to feel more independent, then it's good to get the zinc rich foods in. So seafood, of course, is essential fats and zinc go hand in hand. So golden linseeds are high in zinc, along with essential fatty acids. Seafoods, lovely source, or your oily fish, lovely source of zinc and lovely source of essential fat, as are all of the sort of mollusk type foods, your shellfish and so on. Little excursion and diversion there, but just thinking about what purpose minerals serve in the body in a very different way. So calcium issues, it's really going back to dairy, not just about the right sort of calcium, because then of course you've got green leafy veg, and things like sesame seeds and nuts. And we're going to have a look at some more sources right at the end. It's thinking about the need to reduce calcium misplacement. So what is causing our calcium to misplace off the bone? And one of the most important things is salt. So table salt, not the, you sort of a little bit of sea salt or a little bit of rock salt, because they have all the other minerals in them. But something like, for example, a hard cheddar or a blue cheese will be really, really high in something like table salt. And that kind of saltiness, along with, wheat breads, biscuits, cakes, bacons, hams, sausages, all of those types of processed foods, takeaways, and are, she said, having had fish and chips on a little camping excursion at the weekend, but
Nice.
gluten-free, gluten-free. Rare treat, and probably not what you ought to call a treat, really. But thinking about the fact that those salty foods and, poor quality soy sauce, bovril, that kind of thing, all of those will misplace our calcium off the bone. So it's thinking about what fluids am I putting my bones in? I mean, actually, Janice, you mentioned another one, salty crisps would be another one, of course, that would contribute to that situation, where we're misplacing calcium to the wrong place, so that our hard tissues are softening, our soft tissues are hardening, and the bone loss can be enormous. So just thinking about loss of calcium through urine and what can contribute to that. Some drugs are classic contributors for that. Things like, for example, diuretic drugs. Alcohol can cause loss of calcium through urine. Sugar as well is a classic alongside processed salt for dissolving calcium off the bone. Smoking has the same impact. I've already mentioned animal foods, high quantities of animal foods. And it's, these thin strips of salmon that we buy, more than adequate an amount of protein there. Tea, coffee, chocolate, all the diuretics will pull calcium off the bone as well and cause that loss through urine. So causes of bone mineral loss, just to make sure I haven't missed any of, oh yes, antibiotics and steroids are another couple which contribute as well. And of course, lack of sunlight, and that's one of the things. It's sort of thinking, well, what does help mineralization onto bone? And of course, vitamin D is a class act in terms of that. We absolutely need to make sure that we stock up on that as much as we possibly can over these next 5 or 6 days, I think it is, or maybe 10 days if we're lucky. Nab that sunshine. And so thinking about the calcium, it's always back to that pH. So your body, if it's becoming osteoporotic, is only ever trying to restore the imbalance in your pH by taking calcium off the bone. So repeating myself again, but lack of sun exposure. But also alongside lack of sun exposure, the other thing is physical inactivity. So if we're not getting out and, you know, having some kind of pavement pounding activity, we are not going to be contributing to our bone building its density. And in actual fact, osteoporosis, physical activity is a really strong contributor to increasing bone health. And the research shows that, I can't remember quite the percentage of contribution, but I would say it's around 40% alongside if it was 60+% diet. It's quite a high contribution. So, you know, it's keeping moving and making sure that we've got activity that is, you know, increasing that ability for the bones to build their density back up, having given the part of the ingredients, which is the sunshine. And this is why it's so nice to choose an activity like walking outside that actually gets us out in the light. And it doesn't have to be running at all. It just needs to be regular walking. So looking at other fantastic calcium sources, any of our leafy greens, like you've already mentioned, and they're not only high in calcium, of course, they're also high in magnesium. And your magnesium is what helps push your calcium into the right place. So your kale, your spinach, your broccoli, your cavolo nero, your cabbages, like your savoys, your spring cabbages, anything like that is absolutely fantastic. There's actually no evidence of fracture prevention from consuming dairy, but they do know that it can cause a robbing of calcium from the bones. Now, in the East, they don't actually consume the dairy there. Of course, their traditional sort of dairy has been originally with artisans, things like soy milk, like tofu, and tofu uses a magnesium form, or sometimes uses a magnesium form, in order to coagulate the curds to make the tofu. And of course, traditionally, those products weren't manufactured, they were made in small, you know, shops, daily, freshly. Now, it's true to say that soy is a goitrogen, and so it's one of those things that if eaten in large quantities could contribute to suppressing thyroid energy. So from that perspective, it's not great. But if, for example, once every couple of weeks, you were to have some tofu in a stir fry, or use some silken tofu in a, for example, mackerel pate instead of, I think I already mentioned that one, instead of a dairy, then you're not going to be creating a terrific problem in terms of the thyroid, because you know, looking at other goitrogens, for example, the cabbage family and oats can be a goitrogen, but there's not a lot of evidence that goitrogenic foods necessarily do suppress the thyroid. One thing that research has shown, and not a lot of people are aware of, is that the insulin growth factor that makes a calf grow to a fully grown cow or bull in a year to 2 years is a contributor to prostate disease. Not only prostate, it tends to target the IGF-1, our reproductive cells, so it can contribute to breast cancer, prostate cancer, and also ovarian cancer. So again, 3 really good reasons why it's not a great food to eat in great quantity. It was Professor Jane Plant who wrote Your Life in Your Hands that discovered that, because she has started with breast cancer and had the tumour removed, but then found that she was chasing tumour after tumour, and it got to about her 5th tumour, and she was a biologist and decided to start researching because she'd spotted that some countries simply didn't have breast cancer, and she'd looked at the traditional diet of China and Japan and found that, of course, there isn't the dairy consumption there that there is in the West. And she started to look into substituting dairy with soy produce. And she wrote Your Life in Your Hands for women on breast cancer, and similarly a book for men on prostate cancer. Because once she stopped eating dairy, that 5th tumour disappeared. So then, thinking about the high calcium in dairy, what they've discovered is that it can interrupt the conversion of vitamin D to its active form, because it's not the right form of calcium.
Can I just ask something? Does all that you've talked about dairy, does the same apply to sheep's milk and goat's milk?
They're not quite the same, actually. Goats and sheep's are quite a bit closer to breast milk. They're not as high in sodium, and they don't have the quantity of IGF-1 that the cow's milk does. Because if you can imagine the size of a calf and the beastie that it grows into, a lamb growing into a sheep, or a kid, I couldn't think what they were called, a kid growing into an adult goat, is not quite the growth sort of take up as cattle is. And so, no, they are actually, I have got a table somewhere showing the mineral and protein and fat content. I'll have to see if I can find it for you.
Thank you.
And I'll send a copy out.
Right.
And because very often they can tend to be less interfered with and less processed. So some people find they can tolerate them.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So yes, I can tolerate it. I can't afford it, but I can.
Yeah, that's yeah. The only thing about some of them, for example, feta is really, really high in salt, and you're back to that issue where, for example, did we talk about the Cretan diet?
I missed it if you did.
Well, on the island of Crete, they have about 80% thyroid issues in women and 50% thyroid issues in the men. And when you think about the diet, it's salty cheeses like feta, salty olives, and it's because your thyroid and parathyroid manage your calcium metabolism. It's the high salt intake, partly, that throws out your thyroid function. And so if you can imagine, they also have the issue with cretinism. That's where that comes from, the Isle of Crete. And so very much associated with thyroid, parathyroid function.
What is cretinism?
I'm going to have to look it up to give you a proper definition, Janice.
Thank you for asking, because I didn't have
Give me a
mine.
second. Because I mean, it's not actually something that, fortunately, I've come across to treat.
You don't live on Crete.
No. That's right. Congenital condition characterized by stunted growth and failure of normal development, and in infants, coarse facial features. Cretinism results when the thyroid gland fails to produce or produces insufficient amounts of the thyroid hormone thyroxine at birth. So they can do replacement therapy with thyroxine if it's recognised early enough. But, thinking about milk, this is just milk really. Unfortunately, if people do drink milk, it neutralizes the stomach acid, because milk is actually neutral, but particularly raw milk is neutral. And if it's processed, if it's pasteurized, if it's homogenized, rather where raw has those enzymes that will help someone digest it, if it's pasteurized and homogenized, it doesn't have those. And so it's the protein digestion which is challenging for the digestive system. Mucus forming in the respiratory system, the actual consumption, but mucus forming in the gut because of the difficulty in digesting the protein. So can contribute from the respiratory system point of view to that horrible nasal drip, the throat clearing, the phlegm in the throat, chronic fatigue for some people, can cut down people's ability to absorb food generally, because the more coated your intestines become with excess mucus, the less you're able to take up into the body. And sorry, I've already mentioned where we've got low levels of magnesium, it's hard to push our calcium into the right place. And so if, for example, somebody's eating cheese all day long and no green leafy veggies, they're not going to have the ingredients to actually even utilize some of that calcium anyway. And calcium metabolism will be poor, because they're a little team working together. Just a mention about infants, the kind of symptoms seen with lactose intolerance: nausea, bloating, cramping, diarrhea. Our ability to digest lactose goes down the older we get, up to the age of 2, and at least 10% of asthma cases are linked to food allergies, with milk being a contributing factor. I think it's probably higher than that, but that's the statistic that I've seen. Also, a lot of people don't know that milk is not good for the pancreas and the production of insulin. And so particularly in infants, if a child is given dairy and there is a particular, hereditary factor in the family, then it is possible that they are more likely to develop type 1 diabetes, because the milk causes an autoimmune reaction to the dairy protein. The milk is implicated in the autoimmune reaction, like we were mentioning about the wheat last week. But when we get a reaction to the dairy protein, it's actually that autoimmune reaction that destroys our insulin producing cells in the pancreas, and can lead to the type 1 diabetes. And it's really unfortunate that that it's much more common where children have been given cow's milk from fairly early on rather than breastfed. And so certainly by the age of 7, they may have moved into type 1 diabetes, but actually I've seen it occur up to the age, early 20s as well. And so thinking about other problems can cause problems with protein metabolism, those autoimmune problems, and also things like irritable bowel syndrome. Along with wheat, dairy is one of the most classic contributors to IBS. This is the other thing about calcium, that unfortunately, if we take it off the bone because we temporarily need it in the blood, needed by the heart, needed by the digestion, if we've got it in the wrong place, and then it starts to move around in larger quantities in the bloodstream, it can, rather than get put evenly back onto the bone, because the thyroid with a high salt intake will become less functional, and the parathyroid, what happens is that we tend to dump it around the body. So if you think about bunions, for example, what we're told is, of course, that bunions are from wearing the wrong shoes. And it's an absolute load of nonsense. Bunions are caused by calcium in the wrong place. Your calcium is coming off the bone, it's not getting put back evenly on the bone, and we're calcifying elsewhere. So, it's when we see those little nodules on finger joints, on toes, we can see them on top of toes. Had a number of clients come for that with reflexology over the years. People get little lumps on their elbows. And if you can imagine somewhere, while that's happening, and there's this lumpiness that's going on a joint somewhere, that maybe a hip is thinning or a knee is thinning, and other joints in the spine are thinning. Things like scoliosis, where the spine goes out of shape, or dowager's hump and things like that, are calcium dumping into the wrong place. And equally, some cancers can start as calcium dumping. For example, DCIS is a classic one of calcium dumping in the milk ducts in the breast. And it's not a cancer, but it is calcium going into the soft tissues. Sorry, have I made you all want to go and slit your wrists now? So then, looking at calcium and other sources, all of your green leafy veggies are absolutely amazing, as we said. Karen mentioned beetroot leaves and chard. They're both fabulous. Even your red leaves will have some calcium in as well. Things like your bony fish, So your sardines and your pilchards, if you make a fish stock, if you can get hold of some fish skeletons, will be a nice source of calcium. Things like your chicken stock are a lovely source as well. So if you happen to roast a chicken, you know, not to waste the carcass, to take everything off it and stick the carcass in a slow cooker, shove a load of veggies in with it, you know, bit of garlic, onion, carrot, celery, and cook it up overnight in your slow cooker, and make yourself some lovely stock, which will be, you know, bone rich and also lovely and soothing for the gut. So then you've got things like, you mentioned your essential fat rich fish, such as your salmon and tuna and mackerel, little bits of calcium, sesame seeds, and then tahini ground up from sesame seeds. Almonds are a very nice source of calcium, and most nuts have a bit of calcium. Some of your pulses are a good source. Butterbeans, for example, nice source of calcium and magnesium. Chickpeas are a nice source of calcium. Seaweed is a lovely one to include and stip over salads. And then you've got blackstrap molasses. So if you're using any form of sweetening, then blackstrap molasses, probably already mentioned, it's got magnesium, it's got potassium, it's got some calcium, it's got B vitamins. And then quinoa is also a nice source of calcium.
Is that molasses the same as black treacle?
Not quite the same. I think the black treacle is a little bit more processed.
Right.
But molasses is just what they get as they've lifted it off of the cane sugar. It's what's left with all the B bits.
I've just got a new tin of that.
All right. Well, it's certainly a heck of a lot better than golden syrup.
Okay.
And actually, I have got a lovely gingerbread recipe, which just uses a tablespoonful of molasses. If you would like me to send that out, and I think I have a fruit cake also that just cooks up molasses, coconut oil or butter, and then you put the dried fruit in that, and then you let it soak a little bit, and then you add everything else and you bake that. And again, very low in sugar.
Right.
Yeah, that would be great, please, both of those.
And what I would suggest is, if you make something like that, it can be nice to chop it up and freeze it in pieces, so that there isn't that temptation to sort of chop one's way through it. Get a slice out of the freezer if you've got an attack of the munchies. At least the sugars in it will have a bit of calcium in them.
Yes.
So I'll have a look and see if I have typed that one in, because it's one that used to be a family recipe. But the ginger uses coconut oil and ground coconut, and some almond, I think. Already mentioned soy, because mainly of the way we access soy in this country, it's not a great replacement for dairy. I mean, I did mention its goitrogenic properties, but it also contains phytates, and I would say that's probably one thing that is more inhibiting rather than the fact that it's a goitrogen. Oat milk is another one. Of course, it is another goitrogen, but again, it's often a alternative milk that you can get with very little else in it. can be very, very simple. And to be fair, if you soak your oats overnight in water, they will kind of make their own milk anyway to make your porridge or your muesli with, because the water, you know, that you've soaked them in has produced that oat milk. And there's an amazing Scottish recipe that I have to confess my family make at Christmas, and I can't think of the name of it. I think it begins with a C. Is it? You know, I can't think what it is, but basically it's a kind of soaked oat mixture which you then add whiskey and honey to.
Ooh.
And they love that for their Christmas morning. I don't know, what can you do with them? So so rice milk is one I don't particularly recommend, because generally speaking it's very, very sweet, and it's got masses of things added to it often as well. It's very low in protein, and a poor one, for example, to use for children. Better to use an oat or an almond, particularly almond. So things like cashew milk, you can get tiger nut milk, you can get almond milk, you can get pretty much hazelnut milk, you can get pretty much anything under the sun these days. Almond milk is a nice one, and it's an easy one to make for yourself if you wanted to. So I think when I sent out a couple of recipes at the beginning, when we spoke about them, really by soaking almonds overnight and then giving them a rinse and a drain and popping them into, let's say, a blueberry smoothie and adding water, you're making your own almond milk already. The only thing you're not doing is taking the fibre out. And if you wanted to, you could use almonds and water, and simply strain them through a muslin nut bag and make your own almond milk. So thinking about processed salt and sugar and RPH, the kind of things that we see with acute calcium misplacement are tooth decay, obesity, heartburn or gastric reflux, and yeast infections. And so one of the things that's not particularly well known is that when we're misplacing our calcium, we are contributing as well to a candida type picture. So we're much more likely to get things like thrush, athlete's foot, ringworm, any of those yeasty proliferating type conditions is a sign that calcium is in the wrong place. So it's thinking about these poor old sodiumized cells, and this is where a lot of conventional yeast reducing diets or anti-candida diets are really encouraging people to cut out sugars, cut out fruit, cut out sugary foods, but there is not a lot of emphasis on cutting out salty foods. And because they misplace calcium, they are also a huge contributor to yeast forming conditions. So when calcium misplacement gets quite chronic, the types of conditions that we can see are thyroid, as we've already mentioned, gallstones, because the misplaced calcium can bind up along with cholesterol in the liver and gallbladder and form little stones. In the kidneys, it binds up the misplaced calcium with oxalic acid and can contribute to kidney stones. Arthritis is a problem because, as I mentioned, the joints can be thinning, they can become quite inflamed and painful. Heart issues. So if we're misplacing our calcium, very often there is a low magnesium as well, and the kind of issues can be things that, you know, perhaps as I would say, as acute as palpitations, but long term can contribute to hardening of the arteries because the calcium binds up with the just a minute, the lipoic, no, where's it gone? Oh, Suze. Anyway, the low vitamin C, which contributes to that cholesterol-like product that binds up in your arteries, contributing not only to heart problems, but also strokes. Diabetes is contributed to by chronic calcium misplacement because you need good levels of calcium to keep your blood sugar steady. And cancer and osteoporosis we've mentioned as well. So thinking about food, I've mentioned nut milks, oat milks. Cashew nut cream is a nice one for pouring over fruit. Maybe consider trying as a replacement for yogurt. It's very pleasant. Cashew nut pate. Not sure if I did send the recipe out for that one. I'll have to look into that. And fish and chicken broths are good too, to use in soups.
See 3 depressed faces here.
Sorry about that. I will hopefully give some ideas with some recipes, and you'll feel a bit happier. Because I think sometimes it's finding replacements that you really like that help, you know, sort of get over that disappointment.
It's more the fact that practically everything that you've said, I've got some evidence of, and I think at my age, how the hell am I going to get them sorted out? I shall have
it is possible.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, how fast can we turn all this around? Because I actually feel quite depressed now. Yeah. That's really quite scared me.
Yes, me too.
And I don't know. And I did have one yogurt binge, which is kind of I think I'd said to you before, my go-to food if I get it. And I knew it was wrong, but that is actually, over the weeks we've done it, that's the first time I've done that. So I've kind of nearly weaned myself off yogurt, but it's ever so hard.
Yeah.
But can we correct it? And I'm looking at my feet, because we have bunions in our family. My daughters have got them. I've got one. And is that all because we've all got calcium displacement?
Yes, it will have been contributed to calcium misplacement. Very often, with things like bunions, that story will be able to come down through the generations, because of the diet.
Right.
Because if that is corrected, then it isn't, you know, it doesn't have to take place in the next generation.
Right. Okay.
And so if you mentioned your daughter is very careful with the diet that she gives the children. Yes. So if, one of the things is low salt. So if you've started the family off with not adding any salt to anything, and then, the processed foods are kept to a minimum, then it's much less likely to happen. Yeah. And one of the other things that will often be a factor in all of this is some form of stress. And even for children. Yes. Because, my grandmother had terrible feet. They were misshapen and bent all over the place. Her toes, were up like this with calcifications on, bunions literally at an angle like this. And they had been like that. They gradually started to go from the age of early teens, I think. But if you look at her life story, her mum died when she was 9. And then a couple of years later, her father remarried a woman that she did not get on with at all. In fact, I can remember her telling me the story that she once threw a cutlery box of knives at her stepmother when she was about 14. She loathed her and eventually went to live with her grandmother. But when you think of the amount of stress that she must have been on losing a mum and then this strange woman, coming into the house, you can understand the level of stress that she would have been under. And, thinking about the calcium misplacement story that was there in her family background.
Gosh, that's actually a little bit like my mum. My mum lost her mum very early, and her father remarried, although she did get on with her, to a point, and she was then with her grandmother quite a bit.
Yes.
So that's very similar, isn't it? Yeah. My feet aren't as bad as my mum's, so I'm hoping.
What age did yours start to calcify?
I don't know. I've had it a little bit, and actually it doesn't seem to be going any worse. And I'm looking at my feet now, and one foot is slightly worse than the other, so I do have to watch my shoes. But one foot is actually a very slight bit, so maybe I can kind of correct it so it doesn't go any worse.
The main thing that we can do with calcium misplacement is stop it getting any worse.
Yes.
Once the calcium's dumped, unfortunately,
you can't.
We're generally stuck with it glued on there.
Yeah.
But we can stop it getting any worse.
Yes, which is what I'll make sure I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the aim.
Yes.
I've personally, certainly myself, never come across anybody that has managed to uncalcify a calcified foot because it's set.
Yes. Yeah.
But you can stop them getting any bigger. And stop that in its tracks.
Well, that's something, I suppose. Something positive.
Yeah.
I feel quite disgusted that in all the kind of education that you have, limited though it is, I just think it's disgusting that we grow up without any of this knowledge. I mean, not to put you out of business, but all of these facts.
Yeah.
I can't actually take them on board now. I can't remember enough of it. But when I was younger, I probably could have. And we could have been growing, and taking more of this on board when it was so important.
The difficulty is that everything connected with food in industry now is about
money. Yes.
Yeah.
But it hasn't always been, has it?
I would say the last 120 years, probably.
Oh,
yeah. Since the Industrial Revolution, really. And that was a bit before that, wasn't it? But that was when food started being mass produced very cheaply. And big manufacturers have got bigger and bigger, but no better.
You do realise after listening to all this depressing stuff, I shall have to go and have a treat.
To cheer yourself up.
I'll have a date with 2 almonds.
Yeah, that's it. Oh dear. Yeah. Any questions at all?
When you were talking about salt, does Himalayan salt come under one of the good ones or the better ones?
Yes, Himalayan is like the rock salt.
Yeah.
And that's got up to 80 other minerals.
I thought it was.
Sea salt about 40. Yeah.
I'm doing something right.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is to be sparing with it if you use it.
Yeah.
And we have to be, don't we? Because it's very expensive.
Himalayan salt isn't expensive. You can
Isn't
buy
it?
in B&M a huge pot for £1.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, right. Oh, do you know, I haven't bought any for years. We have a pot of sea salt, and somebody gave us a pot of Himalayan salt, and I think we had it in the kitchen for about 5 years, because literally, if we do use any salt, it's a very small quantity.
Yeah. And I don't use very much, but there's just some things that taste so bland without a little touch. You know.
Yeah.
I try not to have as much.
Buckwheat pancakes need a bit of salt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got that recipe. That would be a good one, buckwheat pancakes.
Buckwheat pancakes. Do you know, I would...
Because presumably you can do those savoury
We
or
have
sweet.
got those, haven't we? I thought we had
Have we?
got that.
Okay.
Maybe it's no, maybe I've missed it, thinking of something
I'll
else.
put it down and check. I think I did send it out last week.
Yes.
But
You might have done, Susie.
Which one are you speaking of?
buckwheat pancakes.
Yes, you sent it.
Oh, I did.
Yes.
Yeah. Thought we got them.
Yeah, it's very easy to mix with water. And
Yeah, I must try that, because that would be, you know, it's easy to do, isn't it?
it is, yeah.
I only had buckwheat and not buckwheat flour, but I zapped it in my NutriBlast, and it's
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Karen, you can do that if you soak it overnight and then blend it with water, rinse it and drain it, blend it with water. You make even more of a living pancake.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right.
In fact, I'll try and find that recipe.
I did actually look for some buckwheat flour and I couldn't find any. So
Holland and Barrett have got some.
Yeah, health food shops usually.
we are just
You have a grape tree where you live.
sorry.
Grape tree. That's another health food type place.
Oh right, okay.
They have it as well.
We're a bit short of places around here.
Visit in your blender, and it makes some flour ever so quick.
Oh, I might give that a whirl then. Yeah.
Susie's just said, not Susie.
It's okay. I'll answer to anything. Sainsbury's were selling the Rude Health sprouted buckwheat flour.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll have to look. If it next time I
We
go.
looked in there first, we couldn't find any kind of buckwheat flour at all, or buckwheat.
Yeah.
So
No.
you
Perhaps it depends on the branch. Yeah. Right.
So
Is that okay?
No, I'm very depressed now.
You're not too depressed.
I felt all right. I've had a funny day, and that's just about finished it off.
Oh dear. Sorry about that.
I'll go and have some food if I can. If there's anything I feel I can eat. Oh goodness! And you haven't really. The only thing, and I think maybe Karen's like me. I think she sounds like she likes a yogurt and stuff. Is there really no yogurty type anything that we can have instead of yogurt? Nothing really, is there not?
Well, there's coconut yogurt.
Right.
I eat a lot of coconut yogurt.
Is that okay or not? Is that?
Oh, I really love it. It's very creamy.
Is that dairy free?
That's dairy free. Oat yogurt.
Oh right, okay. So coconut, okay.
Coconut
yogurt. I am eating way less, so I wouldn't need to have it very much. But just sometimes you just think, oh, I just want my yogurt.
well,
Okay.
Coconut yogurt's lovely.
My yogurt is the live yogurt, and I thought I was doing a good thing. I've been having it on my breakfast every day.
Well, there is that's the kefir one, isn't it, Karen?
Well, yeah, but I've been having kefir.
Oh, I see.
Oh.
Right, I thought you meant it was
Oh,
a
I've got some kefir. Is that better? I've got that.
well, kefir, again, it's a bit like the live yogurt. You've got the enzymes there that help you digest it, but I think it's
But the coconut better. Sorry.
Yogurt Organic do a kefir yogurt,
Right. Okay.
which is made, you know.
But it won't taste that much difference because they taste very similar, I think, kefir and
Quite possibly. Taste quite different. I think the interesting thing is my dad has been giving the dog the Yo Valley kefir yogurt, and he said he's in typical dad language, his guts are much better.
Oh, that's exactly the one that I've got in the fridge that I've had a bit of.
Right.
But that's still got dairy in it though, hasn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
If you continue with dairy, that is a better one.
No, I'm trying to wean myself off it, but the coconut yogurt I need to go and get and
coconut
try and get
is dairy free.
Right. Okay.
And the oat one is as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's what Karen and I going to have to try then.
There's a soya yogurt as well, an Alp Pro soya yogurt. It's very tasteless, but I do use it for occasionally for making not pancakes, I can't think of the word now, pita bread type thing.
Right.
I had that before. It's a bit tasteless, isn't it? And I'm not mad on that one.
I don't use it on its own. As I say, I use it in cooking to make pizza bases and pita breads.
It's quite difficult to get the unsweetened one as well. Quite often they've got sugar in, haven't they?
Yeah, the soy ones and some of the coconut ones, and they do add some form of sugar to. They also add a thickener to.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's trying to get them as unprocessed as possible. Yeah, which is tricky, unfortunately. But yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'll see you tomorrow.
Whip up some soaked cashews and see what you think.
That sounds about the better option, I think.
You could always put a little bit of vanilla. What's it called?
Vanilla essence. I was going to say that it's nice with vanilla essence in.
Yeah. Essence. That's what I'm looking for. A little bit of vanilla essence.
Yeah.
Into what?
Into where you soak an ounce or so of cashews, rinse and drain them in the morning. Just add a little water and whiz them up with a tiny bit of vanilla essence, and make a sort of vanilla cashew cream.
Yogurt.
Yogurt.
But the reason I was eating the yogurt wasn't because I particularly like it, but because I thought I was giving my stomach lots more flora and.
Oh yes. Well, I agree. That is a good reason to eat live yogurt if you can tolerate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Oh, much better that than anything else. Yeah. Good for your guts.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow too.
Put your helmet on to protect yourself from my wrath.
Right, I'll get my tin hat out.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh gosh. Right. Thanks for that. That was really uplifting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Look after you all. And I'll see you Monday, Janice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.